At this point, I think it's clear that the finale of this series was not good. I've been trying to make a video on it with my thoughts, but I don't know what I could have said that hasn't been said already. But after making those 2 Ben 10 videos, I've really gotten into writing fanfiction essentially. So today I am going to attempt to rewrite the Star vs. the Forces of Evil series. Now, I ranked this show number 10 on my top 10 worst TV shows I've ever watched, and I didn't get into why I didn't like it that much in that video because I knew that I would make this one eventually. In that video, I did mention that even before the show fell off, I kind of struggled with many of the filler episodes in the earlier seasons just because the humor didn't always hit, and I found them to be a bit tedious to get through, especially when I could see the beautiful overarching story that was being developed. My word, was this good. So the rewrite will mainly focus on the larger story overall. I'm not necessarily going to be rewriting the smaller filler episodes. Just assume that they would still exist in this rewrite, but I will be focusing on the more story-driven episodes. So here's how it's gonna go. I'm gonna go through different parts of the show and elements of its finale. I will explain what I liked about them and where I felt like they failed in order to explain what I will change about them. Then finally in the end, I will go through the whole series chronologically, telling the story with the changes I have made. If I did not make any changes to a certain arc or an episode and you didn't hear me say anything about it, assume that it happens the way that it did in the show. However, if I remove a character in my rewrite and that character is in a filler episode, just go ahead and assume that filler episode doesn't exist. Also, particularly for when we get to season 4, I will mainly be talking about episodes with a lot of plot relevance with little to no suggestions for new filler episodes, so just assume that there would still be filler episodes sprinkled here and there to ease the tension. Also, I don't normally do this, but hi! Welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel if you're returning. Thank you very much for clicking on my video. It would be really great if you could leave a comment after this one and or share it with your friends. So a quick disclaimer before anything else. I have not watched this entire series in a while. I remember the episodes and plot points very clearly, and I have rewatched some clips and some scenes here and there, but there might be a few small details or elements in the lore that I may have either forgotten about or make a small mistake on. Also, this is my opinion, and let's be real, this show is not going to be rewritten anytime soon, and it's not going to be rewritten by JustARandomSquirrel on YouTube, so try not to take this too seriously, especially when you get to the high commission stuff. Believe me, I've been writing, rewriting, rethinking my life choices all throughout writing that section. It is not going to be perfect, I know. I thought that we should start off positive with the season 3 finale. This was peak Star vs. the Forces of Evil. This was so good. I loved every moment of it. The balance between the comedy and the drama was just done so well, and the conclusion was just So I won't change anything about it, but I think this was the biggest hurdle to rewriting the series because season 3 ended so well. How could you possibly top all that for season 4? At first, I would have said that season 3 should have been the end, and I personally think that I would have preferred if the show was just unexpectedly cancelled after season 3 than whatever that train wreck of season 4 was. But season 4 gave us a lot of really nice Eclipsa moments, and Globgo was released, and I don't know if I love Globgo or Jaime Calmel or both, but either way, season 4 wasn't all bad. It just wasn't very good. But yes, in my rewrite there will still be a season 4, but I think that the biggest issue surrounding season 4 was its villain, so I need to find out who the season 4 villain should have been. If you don't think that the season 3 finale was the best part of Star, then you would have to give that title to the Battle for Muni or the season 3 premiere because it was so good. Except for one little major issue. Okay, this is going to be controversial, but I think that Toffee has to be the final villain. And when I realized this, I began to fear that I would have to do some mental gymnastics to make this work, since Toffee was killed, and we know that he died because Eclipsa was released as per her deal with Moon. But what were we told? What were the facts? We were told that there was only one way to kill a monster like Toffee, and that was with the spell that Eclipsa teaches Moon. There was also a possibility that Eclipsa lied to get herself out of the prison, but for the sake of my point, let's pretend she wasn't lying. Once Toffee was destroyed, Eclipsa would be free, but then perhaps we assumed that the only way for Eclipsa to be freed is if Toffee is destroyed. But what if that isn't the case? Because we know that that isn't the case. Anyway, I've been thinking about this a lot, especially since the spell was not technically used against Toffee again. The second major issue with this is, guys, right now, just tell me what Toffee's plan was. Like, please. I have been looking it up, looking through his actions, and I just don't really understand. I know there was something about him not liking magic, but I thought that the only reason for that was because Eclipsa made a spell that could kill him and he didn't vibe with that. Or at least that's what I thought until I watched that season 4 episode in which he says,
"See? This is the threat of magic. This is what we're at war against."
After Meteora basically sucks his soul out of him. I think that this episode had some potential, but the way that he was just like, this is what we're at war against. I don't know. The creator, Nefsi, has said that Toffee is supposed to be like Magneto in that he isn't wrong, he's just going about things wrong. I'm kind of going to get rid of a lot of the monster racism for this rewrite and the way that that racism is portrayed as racism. And magic will not be destroyed in the end. Spoilers. So I don't think that I'll make Toffee the, well, he had a point kind of villain. In one of the best episodes of the series, Moon the Undaunted, we learn that the mutants and the monsters were about to reach some sort of treaty when Toffee flipped the script and killed Moon's mother, Comet. Considering that Toffee and his cronies also aren't considered regular monsters, it seems to me that they work with neither party. The beef between humans and monsters negatively impacts both sides, and arguably the monsters more, so it wouldn't really make any sense for someone in alliance with the monsters to kill the Mutant Queen. So here's what Toffee's plan is in the rewrite. He wants to take over Muni. I know, it's such a basic and simple motivation, but simple doesn't have to equal bad. Take the Fire Lord, for example. He just wanted to take over the world. Despite his basic plan, he has become one of the more iconic villains in animated history. He was still intimidating, a threatening presence, and boss level by the end of the series. I think that this same thing could have been used here, especially with the change that I'm going to be making to Toffee's quote-unquote death in Season 3. So for that major problem I mentioned earlier, as much as I really liked the Battle for Muni episode, Toffee's death always felt odd to me. A little too anticlimactic. Firstly, his finger reattached. Remember that finger that got blown off using a spell whose damage should have been irreversible? Does no one find that odd? Then when Star blasted him, he was still talking and breathing. Not very well, but still doing it. Ludo then drops a pillar on him and they're just like,
"It turns out you're dead. That's what you get! Hey, look what I did! All by myself. Oh no, I can't see a thing!
Do you think he's really gone?
Looks pretty gone to me.
Can't get more gone than that!
But really, why would this kill him? Why wouldn't he be able to regenerate once that pillar is moved? They also just leave that there. Nobody finds that weird? Now, granted, we got the finale that was Meteora afterwards, so I was kind of distracted from this unsatisfying feeling that I had. But then it came back around in Season 4, where they kept teasing Toffee with all his appearances and references to him, but then instead, we got that Mina person as a giant monster, and perhaps this became the biggest disappointment. As I was writing this video, I watched a YouTube video of someone saying that they should have had the final villain be Toffee's mentor, who was a character introduced after Season 3 in an official publication of the Book of Spells. I want to say this is a good idea, but I don't know enough about this person. I will say, however, that I can buy that it would have been a better ending instead of that purple pigtail person that I do not like thinking about. And this also indicates to me that there are other fans out there who would have wanted more from the lizards. So for Toffee's demise in Season 3, think about Bill from Gravity Falls. There was one way to kill him, they used a different way. Who's to say if it worked? One final explanation of this version of Toffee that I'm working on. We love this guy, right? We think he's so cool and powerful and dangerous, but aside from his regeneration, what can he do? He's quite strong, fair enough, but what else? Has anyone questioned this? Has anyone noticed that he doesn't really seem to have anything else? Hell, even him and Star don't ever really face off against each other. Yes, he sucks out souls when possessing Ludo, but he has the wand when he's doing that. Other times he kind of just stands around, as the kids say, aura farming. I want to see him actually do something in the rewrite. Okay, hear me out, yeah? I don't like racism allegory in fictional worlds. Like, they don't really jive with me. And I know that some people are starting to see it too. I think this element of Muni's history wasn't terrible, but in my opinion, it wasn't given enough attention for it to be the main conflict of the final season. It didn't really feel earned to me. I liked the idea of Star talking about Muni history on Earth and then realizing that the mutants were in the wrong and the monsters were not all that bad. But I don't think that this was done amazingly well, as the main antagonists on the show at the time were monsters. When rewriting this, I would just make the stigma surrounding monsters to be just general fear of them, and the need to fight them away and keep them away from magic, and leaving it at that, and not really having... Okay, this is really hard to explain. You might disagree with me, but I feel like season 4 was definitely leaning in with its monster racism and activism, mimicking real life racism and activism in a way that came across a little too on the nose. Like every time Mina speaks and she's supposed to sound like some genocidal maniac, I get it. I know what is being implied, but the show up until this point has not focused enough solely on monster oppression to properly make Mina seem unjustified. Yes, we had Buff Frog, and yes, Ludo got more fleshed out and technically becomes a good guy in the end, but all the villains, aside from Mina, who can barely even be called a villain, all the villains have been monsters and one half monster, with none of their motivations having enough to do with human-monster relations. Even when magic is destroyed, it has nothing to do with monster racism. I guess technically it was in order to stop Mina, but come on. Star's magic could kill an immortal lizard but not an idiot in a suit? Seriously? Besides the point, a character who was set up to be a villain and turned out not to be, Eclipsa, was a Mumin. Heinous was a Mumin for the most part, yes, but looking more and more monstrous as she became more evil. And also Globgor. Yes, in season 4 they showed that he is a gentle person and a good father and husband, but they don't really deny that he literally ate one of the previous Mumin kings and did something to the spider bite people. I can't remember. Like, I know that the queens have probably had some kind of body count in the past, but eating people seems so gruesome and savage for a character who was supposed to be gentle and well liked. Do you see what I'm saying when I say I didn't like how the monster stuff was handled? I'm also just realizing that in Ben 10 Ultimate Alien there is a similar storyline where the aliens are oppressed unjustly, but I didn't have an issue with it there because, excluding some points here and there, most of UAF, i.e. Alien Force and Ultimate Alien, has a team fighting aliens, yes, but also helping other ones. We also do see aliens in very neutral roles, and they fight the Forever Knights who are human. So it seemed that the idea of being alien or not is not the sole reason of how evil you are. And then on top of that, while yes, the team presents human, they are all descended from different aliens. Ben is a quarter Anodite and does change into several different aliens because of the Watch. Kevin is half Osmosian, and we see him use his powers to alter himself and even spend a season with him in a mutated form. And our queen, Gwen, is also quarter Anodite and got the better genes for her powers and this form that we occasionally see her in. So when the final season was spent in part focusing on alien oppression, I thought it was okay. My issues came in with how this was executed, but you can go watch that video for yourself. In the rewrite, there will still be tension between monsters and humans. There will still be some level of fear from the humans that the monsters might attack, and from the monsters that one of the Queens of Muni could fight them if they do too much. But instead of doing the, well, both sides have their prejudice, it will still be that humans were the second settlers of Muni, with monsters being pushed out, and the two kingdoms stay separate, but there is a sense that Muni holds more power than the monsters, mainly because of the queens. This power imbalance and potential oppression will obviously mirror real-life conflicts. The difference here is that the story will not bend over backwards to look more like one conflict or another conflict, but rather remain within the context it presented itself in. What I want to delve into is more of the written history that supports Mumin's fears and the actual reasoning of why the fear exists, or rather why it needed to exist. The reason will be due to what the rewritten Magical High Commission wants. Ugh, speaking of them. Okay, before I say anything, I just need to know if these weirdos are monsters or not. Because they don't like monsters, and yet they look the way that they do. I think instead of the Commission being monster racist or whatever they are, I'd make them more cowardly if anything else. Maybe the last war between humans and monsters kind of took a toll on them, and the thought of Eclipsa and Globgor being together was proving to not be fun. Or maybe they were afraid of Globgor, or maybe there was something about why they didn't want peace between humans and monsters. Okay, I really enjoyed the idea of them being dodgy, and I want to lean into them hiding a lot from both the audience and the butterflies. The main thing that remained somewhat unexplained to me was why they didn't want a monster on the throne, since monster racism barely makes any sense for them with the way that they look. One of my favorite moments from the show is after Eclipsa is freed, and she doesn't even care about the throne. She just wants to find out what happened to her daughter, and she learns that the High Commission got rid of her baby and put a peasant on the throne instead. This conspiracy was one of the more interesting things to come out of the Magical High Commission, and I think what would have made it more compelling is if the Commission's intentions were understood more. They just simply said they didn't really like monsters. I'm trying to think about whether their reasoning behind this was that they didn't want an alliance between monsters and humans, and they didn't want monsters integrating into the kingdom, or because they didn't want a baby like Meteora to exist as queen, because queens get access to magic. The latter option seems more interesting to me, but let's circle back to this. For Hekapu, I was going to write this in the ship section, but I don't even like thinking about her and Marco as a ship, basically because it's kind of creepy. Just had to get that off my chest. I don't care that they aged him up because now that makes things weird with him and Star. But other than that, I found out from the wiki that she is not one of the founding members of the Magical High Commission. So where did she come from? All the High Commission members are said to be made up of only magic. But if that's the case, was Hekapu made later? Did she always exist? Can other creatures of only magic be created later on? Back to this later. About Romulus, he will be very different in my rewrite. I think having him be the really dumb character whilst also being the most bigoted creates the idea that oppression is done by idiots, which, yes, there is something to be said about the lack of intelligence and critical thinking of oppressors and the bigots that they create. But at the same time, more often than not, oppressors are strategic and intentional in creating systems of abuse. Romulus's lack of intelligence felt almost like a cop-out, like all that happened only happened because he was so dumb. I know he was manipulated by Moon, but I will talk about Moon's betrayal later. Don't bring that up now because it makes me too angry. But especially with him being the commission member who did the most in season 4, this felt like an easy way to scapegoat him as the worst of them, and then he gets detained as if no one else on the commission messed up the entire royal family and was part of the cause of Meteora's spiral. Right. It's also kind of similar to how I feel about Ghost Solaria ignoring Mina in the finale as if she didn't create Mina for a racist purpose, but that's irrelevant to this section, and I honestly do not want to open up that can of worms. So in the rewrite, the Commission's main goal is to maintain the status quo, but specifically the status quo that they have created. The Monster Kingdom is less than them, and they have no access to the magic that the butterflies have. Also, I keep calling it a Monster Kingdom because they refer to Glogwa as a Monster King, but I'm also starting to realize I think they just call him that. I don't think he's an actual king, and I don't think that the monsters have a kingdom. So I'm gonna keep using the word Monster Kingdom, but I don't know what are they a republic? Are they a group? Are they part of Muni? I don't really know. Anyway, Globgo can shapeshift, yes, but he doesn't have any more power outside of that. But every monster does seem to have some level of strength, at least more so than the average human. Deep this, if it wasn't for the butterfly family, if the monsters were to uprise and claim more of the kingdom, they could. Look at these people. It will be so easy to take them over. The High Commission essentially chooses to uplift the humans and nurture their power and growth so the status quo can be maintained, whilst also making sure the magic is always used in the way that it's supposed to be. Some monsters such as Ludo seek to take that magic to get an even playing field and potentially take over more of Muni. But finally, part of the status quo is the tension between humans and monsters. The Commission helps to sow seeds in humans' minds that monsters are evil and that they need to be stopped, and that it is the job of the queens to destroy these forces of evil, essentially always keeping monsters subdued. So then the queen needs to be more powerful, and then that power is loyal to the Commission. But when Eclipsa was about to marry a monster, they weren't scared of the drama that it would create, they were scared of the peace that could occur. Moreover, they would need to work with a royal family that is part monster, but the monsters don't revere the Commission as much as the humans. But again, why? Why does the Commission need to do all this? Well, what if the Commission are secretly monsters? Hold on. I know it's a weird idea, but what if the young monsters who used magic consistently are now really, really powerful? Star and Moon are quite powerful, but this is still their final form, and they can't really hold it indefinitely. Think about the Commission. Hekapu can duplicate herself and forge interdimensional scissors. Mind you, when Star reaches this form, it seems as if she opens a portal to enter back onto Muni after being stuck in the wand, so clearly someone who learned magic could have this ability. Romulus has crystals, and whatever his name is in like a different dimension or something, but they don't look human like the humans do, and no matter how powerful a queen can become, they will never really be on the same level as a Commission, which is why they choose to uplift the humans, because they are easier to subtly command. And this is why they need to keep the monsters down. If they are down, they can't get the magic, so they can't get as powerful or potentially more powerful as the Commission. But obviously they can't let people know what they are, because look at how weak and average they would look. They need to be seen as powerful and otherworldly. But this is why Toffee presents the biggest threat to the status quo, as he is aligned with neither monster nor human and seeks to conquer both sides for his own means. Moreover, what if he is also a monster exposed to magic, therefore potentially as powerful as the Commission since they are unable to destroy him on their own? But Eclipsa, a lowly Mumin, found a way to stop him and his kind and threaten the Commission. This, coupled with her affair with Globgor, threw the Commission over the edge, which is why they need to take action. Now, I am not 1000% sold on this being the best idea for the rewrite, but this is the best that I've got for right now, and yes, it is better that the Commission actually has clear motivations here. So please take it with a grain of salt when I explain how this affects the rewrite later on. I also know that it's not the best trope to have the oppression of one group be caused by the people of that community, since it places the blame of oppression on the oppressed. That being said, there are cases where people within a community are part of that community's oppression, so I will keep thinking about this when I'm fleshing it out. This is a section that is obviously needed for this rewrite. In the original drop to this video, I actually left him out. It was mainly because he was always a misunderstood character in my mind. On one hand, he was weird and kooky, and we obviously weren't supposed to understand what he was on, like with that whole eye thing, but I like this about him. Other times though, he felt unused and underexplored. Think about all that he went through, but he still never actually really dies. He shows up whenever, wherever, however, and sometimes even whyever. So I will use this idea in the rewritten version where he is the purely made of magic character. He's someone who knows a lot more than he lets on, and his motivations won't ever really truly be understood. He is the one who gave magic to humans like in the original, but in season 4 of the rewrite, we will learn about how he has exposed different realms and peoples to magic before. Kind of like an origin story for the magical universe, since magic seems to link together all these different realms. He began to give magic to the monsters on Muni, including Toffee, Hekapu, Rompulus, and the other members of the High Commission, as well as one of Globgor's ancestors. But Toffee gets power hungry and tries to take over. He fights the other monsters and tries to destroy Globgor's ancestors as well. The remaining monsters try to kill him, but he can regenerate. Glossaryck realizes that he made a mistake giving the power to Toffee, and they lock him in a different dimension. Glossaryck vows not to give magic to monsters the same way, but when the human settlers arrive, he sees that they kind of have nothing going for them. He puts the magic in a wand to help regulate the usage of it, and crowns a new Queen of Muni to stop the monsters from uprising. He trains them and makes sure that they could never be the same way that Toffee was. As the years pass and tales about magical monsters decrease, the members of the High Commission create the title for themselves in order to be seen and heard over monsters and humans alike. Glossaryck agrees to go along with this as long as it keeps monsters like Toffee from existing again. I'll have to try and flesh out this lore a bit more. Are there more of him? Can he himself use the magic? Is this why he doesn't ever really participate in fights? Things like that. I decided to add this section because I love Eclipsa and any chance to talk about her, but as I was rewatching certain clips for this video, it was said in the trial episode that she ran off with Globgor when she was already married to this man whose name I will not be looking up. It also seems that she left her baby with him, which seems weird and out of character unless I have misunderstood something. I know that at this point she had most likely been frozen in the crystal, but does that mean that she left with Meteora, got frozen, and then the baby was handed back to her husband? Yeah, I'm gonna need to work on the backstory here. Maybe even question her marriage to this man. In the rewrite, Moon is not going to have some last-minute change of heart and betray Star. I think that was a pretty forced decision. I really enjoyed some level of conflict with Eclipsa taking the throne as Moon didn't exactly give it up, but I feel that Moon's arc for season 4 should have been more about trying to find her place again. In my version, she knows that Eclipsa is the rightful heir and doesn't regret not taking back the throne once she got her mind back. I think that her leading that camp outside Muni shows that she still wants to guide her people in some way, so I feel that she could have joined the Magical High Commission or other new version of it, or just be in some position of royal advising or maybe even teaching. Yeah, the more I think about her, the more I'm just like, let's just remove this character. I'm sorry, I just didn't vibe with her. I don't know if you could tell. She was kind of boring and unnecessary, and in this rewrite she is completely irrelevant because she doesn't really fit into any of the themes. It's also a little irritating how her magic is supposed to have been created by Solaria to kill monsters, but like, why had she never used it on Toffee? Felt like a waste. Let's just remove her. I honestly feel like this shouldn't exist. I'm sorry. Honestly, what was it doing for the series? What have we gained by having it here? I went back and rewatched the Blood Moon Ball episode, and I'm not gonna lie to you, Tom doesn't come out looking great. I know where he ends up in the end and how he stops being toxic and starts a relationship with him, and I really did end up liking him and I still do like him, so I think I forgot about this all, but Tom is like really controlling in this episode. And I'm sure you're gonna say, well, people can change. And I get it. He's not going to be perfect in my rewrite or anything. But it's the fact that while, yes, Marco followed Star when she asked him not to. I don't think that he really knew what he was doing when he started to dance. That and the fact that the moon is called hypnotic at some point and they do seem to be in a trance here, it is easier to forgive Marco. But Tom knew that this dance would kind of bind their souls together or something, and he didn't exactly disclose it to Star before it all. Isn't that kind of giving like forced marriage, kind of? Do you see what I'm saying when I say this is kind of weird? Anyway, I'll get into this more in the ship section, but I don't hate Starco. I think that they're cute, but what I don't like is when we dilly-dally, waste time, and make things weird. I believe that they liked each other, but it's almost like the show didn't think that we would buy it, so they added the blood moon. There was a point where they went to break the seal, and Tom's grandfather, or great-grandfather or something, told him that when he severed his soul from his ex-wife, deceased wife, I don't know, he forgot the memory of the time that they first fell in love.
Reliquor says he came to the Severing Stone once before, thousands of years ago, because he wanted to sever his soul from my great-grandma, but to do so, he had to sacrifice the memory of the moment they first fell in love. Now he can never have that memory back.
I genuinely thought that Star and Marco were going to forget something, but they didn't, as far as I know. I'm not entirely sure how I can even rewrite this to make the blood moon work. In my rewrite, I might just leave it out. I think a lot of the beef people, and myself included, have with it is that it kind of makes their attraction seem like a curse they can't escape, which isn't great. If I do keep the blood moon in, I'd instead make it so that when two people who like each other are in its light, it changes color or makes a noise or something happens that proves that they like each other. Oh, I think I'm describing Love Alarm. That's funny. Okay, so I hate ships with all the life in me. I don't mind two characters having a relationship before they realize their true feelings for other people. Marco and Jackie, I was A-okay with that. Star and Tom, fine by me. I was also very okay with Star and Marco not being a couple. No, really, when the show first started, it seemed to me like they were just gonna have Star and Marco stay friends, which would have been cool. This was only cemented when they started treating Tom as a romantic possibility and not a random antagonist villain of the week. But then there was Marco's reaction when he thought Star was dead, and there was also Star's crush on Marco, and it became clear that this was going to be a typical friends to lovers, or at least it should have been. But for whatever reason, we left the inevitable Starco conclusion for the literal last minute, and in between that we had to deal with the Blood Moon Ball, cheating and wasting my time. As much as I liked Tom and Star's relationship, I couldn't enjoy it after it was clear that Star and Marco like each other because it felt really mean towards Tom. Not just Star's relationships, but Marco's as well. Why was he with Kelly? What was accomplished there? I've seen people genuinely say that nothing else mattered in the finale as long as Star and Marco got together, but like not to be that person, but of course they were going to get together. How could they not? The writers created an entire curse just to justify them being together, and then removed the curse to prove that they were supposed to be together all along. Point is, Starco was inevitable, so why not just let us see more of this relationship instead of Marco and Kelly? I'm getting too worked up. Also, this is a minor detail, pun intended, but I would not have had Marco age up in a different dimension, be mentally pushing 30, and still attracted to Star. Something about that leaves an ugly taste in my mouth. Also, as mentioned before, I don't like him and Hekapu flirting. I cannot stress that enough. So what would happen with the ships in the rewrite? Honestly, I just think that we need to spend more time with ships that actually matter. Don't misunderstand me, I think it's okay to have cartoon characters, especially in kids shows, have more than one love interest to get the idea that you're not married to the first person you have a crush on. But at the same time, it's weird that I know more about Tom and Star's relationship than I do Star and Marco. Another ship I thought was cute was Janice and Tom. We got one episode, guys. I needed more. Is her name Janice or is it Jana? Or is it Jada? No, it's Jana. Is her name Janice? Jana. I think it's Janice. It has to be Janice. I get that we all hate her, and maybe you're expecting me to remove her, but look, the season 3 episode where her sisters are trying to assassinate each other is one of my favorites, and I cannot give it up. She's also the reason why they originally go to St. Olga's, bringing Heinous, aka Meteora, into the story, so I don't think that I can easily remove her, but I would tone her down a bit in certain episodes. Now, it has been a minute since I started writing the script, and I included a section for Father Time. I can't remember why though. So this section will probably just be quite short. I think that the idea of using Foresight could have been interesting, but I don't know if Father Time is a character I need to include in the rewrite. All I remember about him from the series was that beach day picture thing. This was such a minor annoyance, but this whole plot point felt like a waste of my time. Sorry. Speaking of a waste of my time, What's going on, guys? What is happening? This idea of the spells having a tea party could have worked for a small bit, or like a gag, or like a throwaway joke, but them having their own episode wasn't as compelling in my opinion. It got interesting when the dark spell showed up, but then it started destroying everything it touched, and I was just very confused because why was it only an issue now? Didn't Eclipsa create this spell like 200 years ago? And then the sentient spells didn't even do anything in the final fight anyway, and kinda died off when the magic was destroyed and nobody cared. So yes, no spells in the rewrite. Sorry, not sorry. Now you might say that the spell storyline was supposed to show that dark magic is bad, but also magic is bad, but also, let's just talk about it. One of the best themes of Star vs. the Forces of Evil is written history versus fact. There are a couple of examples where the truth is intentionally skewed and taught as fact for someone else's benefit. In the rewrite, this same theory will be applied to Eclipsa's magic and honestly just everything to do with Eclipsa. Each Queen of Muni for the most part develops their own magical style, and Eclipsa had hers. Because of her defying tradition and marrying a monster, something that actually isn't hidden from Muni's history in the original series, her spells are deemed as dark and dangerous. Now, the show doesn't do too much to explain what sets dark magic apart from other magic. On the wiki, I also saw that apparently the whispering spell counts as dark magic. Why they have beef with Eclipsa as if she found a dark magic then, I will never know. I know the Dragon Prince has fallen off, keep your eyes out for a video about that soon, but at the very least it defined dark magic from the beginning. Magic comes from 6 primal sources, and elves, dragons, and other magical creatures have one of these sources within them, and possesses the ability to do some kind of magic. But dark magic is when the magic is done by using a living magical creature and kind of draining them of that magic part inside of them. So it's clear what is defined as magic versus dark magic. Now, in the rewrite of Star, I still think that dark magic shouldn't be completely defined. Let me explain. What's interesting about the original series is that dark magic is kind of portrayed as dangerous or scary, partially because of the marks that appear on the hand of the user. But deep this, we see that Mumins are just human settlers of Muni. By touching the wand, Mumins would get those marks in their cheeks. But why are these marks seen as fine when these marks are seen as evil? And more so, when you keep using this magic, you might turn into an insect. This is a theme I want to play into, where two things that are weirdly similar are only deemed good or evil based on what those in power say. I won't go into heavy spoilers for Nezha 2, but this is a similar theme there. Firstly, Nezha is the child of a noble family, born with a demon pearl, like good person, bad spirit, where Albing is a dragon, which are like evil in this world, born with a spirit pearl, bad person, good spirit. And this was something introduced in the first movie. When I watched the second, I wasn't entirely sure what counts as demon in Chinese mythology, but the movie is intentional with its definition of a demon versus an immortal. Both beings do not age or die unless killed, which can happen, and both beings possess magical powers. What sets them apart is kind of just what they look like, and this plays on audiences' biases of good and evil and what good and evil looks like. Okay, that's dark magic aside. As said before, magic will not be destroyed in this rewrite, and the only major storyline involving dark magic specifically will just be having it be accepted as just another set of spells. Even calling it dark magic might change.
Hi, this is me editing, and I just realized that I forgot to mention how much I hated when they kind of did a whole thing of like Eclipsa has to be the bigger person because she used a spell to switch places with Romulus and use his power to unfreeze Globgo, and she starts doing it, and then Star's like, how can you have people trust you when you do this? And it's like, I get it, I understand, but can she like be the bigger person once her husband has been freed? Do you see what I'm saying? Like, no, we're gonna be the bigger person. Like, what does that even, like, no, I'm freeing my husband. Like, I don't know, it's just kind of annoying to be like, hey, just let them do bad things and keep doing bad things. I don't know, like, all of a sudden, like, she has to have a moral compass as if Romulus didn't put him there and can, like, easily get him out. And then he gets him out. Do you guys start to understand why I didn't like season 4? Anyway, call me a hater, but she was 1000% justified in using that spell, and she should have finished using that spell and just been like, okay, I will never use it again. I just feel like if there was an episode in the first season where Star finds a spell to switch places with Marco, it could have easily passed as a filler episode without anybody trying to call out the weirdness going on there. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe you disagree.
This was not a major issue of the series. I think everything that was done with her in season 4 was decent enough. I've added this section in last minute to try and justify what I have in mind for her in the rewrite. If there had been a better season 4 villain in the finale, I probably wouldn't have changed a thing. It's just weird to have such a powerful character be written out of the major finale. Her and Mariposa going to that dimension where they age up was truly really fun. My thing is, I wish that actually went somewhere instead of it just being a fun but ultimately irrelevant episode. So with the rewrite incorporating an idea where monsters with magic get more powerful than humans, Meteora aging up in the other dimension might have a greater bearing on the finale. I will keep this brief since there are multiple videos out there on this, but I just had to say, I was livid when Marco got stabbed with the Dark Unicorn and nothing happened with it. This was my breaking point. Outside of that, I don't remember anything from season 4. Like, it just kind of fluctuated between insanely poor writing decisions to unmemorable events. It really felt like outside of the finale, the show didn't really have anything. And if it was building up to the finale, it would have been fine. But the build up to that finale could have been explained in a few sentences. And so we get glimpses here and there of Mina or the spell or Moon, but then the rest of the time would be spent dilly-dallying. Also, I didn't like that Earth and Moon collided. I wouldn't use this idea in my rewrite anyway. I think that if it had to be here, it might have been more interesting if the worlds collided at the beginning of season 4 and the rest of the season is spent in the aftermath, because this finale opened up too many questions and it doesn't really feel like a happy ending, and I don't even understand why it happened. And not to be shady, but if I sat down with the writers, I don't think that they could explain it either. Look, I'm all here for interpretation, but there are times when it shouldn't be up to the audience to do the heavy lifting of the writer's job. There is also this idea among fans that Marco should have had more to do and had some kind of backstory that made him more special. For example, theories of him being related to Eclipsa's branch of the royal family. I used to like this idea. In fact, I used to have a fun theory that he was related to Eclipsa's side of the family and that he and Star should get married to kind of like fix the rift that was caused by the butterfly family kind of being changed when Festivia was put onto the throne. But then I was also like, okay, but Eclipsa is alive and Meteora is also alive, and to remedy that, they should just be given the throne as they deserved. So anyway, and then also I don't want, like I said, I do like Star and Marco together, and I don't really love the idea of them having to be together because of some like royal treaty. Like what? Anyway, I think I'm okay with just having him be a regular guy. Even if he was related to Eclipsa's side of the family, which doesn't really make too much sense, this doesn't really give a clear enough point that he would have powers if he never actually uses the wand. Furthermore, Star isn't related to Eclipsa and the original butterflies, but she goes on to become one of the most powerful magic users. So yes, Marco won't have powers in the rewrite, but he will use the wand at some point in the finale, because I did like that.
Yeah, this is me editing again. I know that everyone has already completely ranted about all the stuff with Star destroying the magic and the ramifications of that, but I just want to spend a bit of time addressing it, because the magical mission, I don't like them, and I've definitely made them more dodgy in my rewrite, but in the original, that's just my personal opinion, they're not that terrible. Okay, aside from what they did to Eclipsa's family, but I don't know how to explain it. They just die, everyone's dead at the end, including Glossaryck. This is people that we know, and then obviously people who should have died. No offense, but Ponyhead, I'm not saying that I wanted her to die. I'm just saying that why is she still flying? And is that not magic that makes her fly? What counts as people being made of magic? I don't know. Can Globcore still shapeshift? She killed people. I was just oh yeah, this is a great ending. What? Actually, what?
This section will be short. I liked Globcore. I liked the episode where the babies go into the magical realm and age up a bit. I liked Tom and Janice. I didn't like the fact that they didn't give us more time there. It's Janice, right? Before I start on the rewrite section, I just want to share some of the ideas I have for future episodes of the series, since people keep saying that Star should come back. For one thing, I don't think it should come back, but if it does, I really do not mind a retcon. Say it was all a dream, I will take it. But in all seriousness, there could potentially be some interesting things done here with merging the magical worlds and Earth. Perhaps they can have it be like Gravity Falls, where all this weirdness is actually contained to Echo Creek, so it's not like the whole world had to suffer. Anyway, the rewrite. Okay, so just assume that everything up until this point has been the same. We get to the Blood Moon Ball. Everything remains the same except that Tom invites Star not to trick her into some kind of commitment, but to understand if he has a chance or not. Star goes to show him that she doesn't have feelings for him anymore, and Marco follows against Star's wishes to try and explain to her that she doesn't owe Tom anything. I'm okay with Tom still being that weird, I guess, or trying not to get angry, but I also want there to be more of Star kind of remembering why she liked Tom, just to make this next part make a bit more sense. Tom just gets upset that Marco is at the ball trying to talk to Star. He tries to pull Star away, but then the moonbeam hits them and changes them from red to blue or something. Not completely sold on how the light changes. Star starts to feel confused, and Tom gets angry with Marco for ruining it. Star faces him like in the original and leaves and talks to Marco on the balcony. She gets mad at him for not trusting her, and she explains that she wanted to go for herself since she doesn't completely know how she feels about Tom, but Marco ruined the moment. I don't think that it needs to be really spelled out that all three of them in the light could imply more than one thing, but this then sets up the next Tom appearance where he tries to figure out if Star and Marco like each other. Yada yada yada, everything remains the same, no Mina whatever her face is. Okay, Season 2 finale and Season 3 premiere. We learn about the deal made with Moon and Eclipsa. This isn't that relevant, but Eclipsa was definitely lying when she said she had to make a deal for the spell to work. She just wanted to get out. But that wouldn't be revealed in this moment. They make the deal that once Toffee is defeated, Eclipsa will be released. Star then returns and obliterates Toffee, and we see the final shot of Eclipse in the crystal, but the crystal doesn't crack. Once again, everything remains the same, including Eclipsa coming back and her and Moon confronting the Commission about Meteora. When asked why they did that, they give a vague answer that doesn't leave Eclipsa satisfied and leaves Moon with questions. The Commission speak to Moon in private and explain that Meteora is dangerous and unstable, and that's why they removed her from the throne. Around this moment, we see Meteora looking through her files and seeing how the Commission removed her from the throne and hid her at St. Olga's. Once more things remain as written, with Meteora stealing souls and Eclipsa using her spell on Meteora. At first, everyone assumes that Meteora is now dead, and the Commission, now de-balloonified, says that this is what they had feared would happen and why monsters shouldn't have access to magic or something along those lines. They praise Eclipsa for killing Meteora, who reveals that Meteora is actually alive and well, and Eclipsa begs to just be left alone. In this moment, Star stands up for Eclipsa and says that she should be on the throne instead. They tell that Meteora is dangerous, and Star refutes this, questioning how the life that they made Meteora live impacted how unstable she became. The Commission tries to dismiss this, but Star isn't backing down, and Romulus admits that Star might have a point. Defeated, the rest of the Commission retreats to reconvene. Eclipsa was used to the betrayal and corruption, which is why she didn't really bother taking back the throne after she was freed. But Star has helped her to essentially right the wrongs of the kingdom, even if it was at detriment to herself. Eclipsa uses this moment as motivation to reshape the kingdom in Season 4. I appreciate Star being there in Season 4 for all the reformation of Uni, but in this rewrite, a lot of this is being led by Eclipsa instead. In Season 4, they still take a journey to find Moon, but when they do, she's obviously a little disoriented from the sudden change of government, but Eclipsa asks for her help, kind of spend more time with the really fun Moon and Eclipsa dynamic that we had seen snippets of before in Season 2. While Eclipsa is focusing on uniting her kingdom and the Monster Kingdom as well, she also wants to free Globgo, which the Commission says no, since they fear that people won't like it and that they think that he will attack, and it's hard to refute since this is how he's frozen, and like I said, it is kind of believed as a common fact that he killed the previous king and burned down a bunch of villages. Eclipsa lets this go, but she requests that Star looks into the history of the High Commission since she feels like there's something that they're hiding. Meanwhile, Tom and Marco discuss Tom figuring out that he kissed Star. Tom says he's willing to move past it for the sake of his relationship with Marco and his relationship with Star. Eventually, like in the original, Tom tells Star that he knows about the kiss, she questions why he kept it from her for so long, and he explains that he wanted her to be the one to tell him. He then questions why it was that she didn't tell him. She hesitates and admits that she doesn't actually know. Tom brings up the Blood Moon Ball and that he knows that Marco was also in the beam when it changed color. He explains that he didn't say anything because he had learned his lesson from trying to find some kind of litmus paper test of Star's affection, but this coupled with the kiss has caused him to question things all over again. So he asks her if she wants to be with him or she wants to be with Tom, and she admits that she doesn't actually know, and this marks the end of their romantic relationship, with Tom saying that he wants someone who is certain that she wants to be with him. Star goes back and eventually talks to him about everything, the breakup, the kiss, the blood moon. Home tells that she doesn't owe anything to Tom or Marco to pursue a relationship right away, and that she can move at her own pace. Okay, enough romance. While Moon and Eclipsa work on the kingdom, Star and I guess Marco too spend time in the Monster Kingdom as well as learning what they can about the Commission, since they aren't completely buying all that they're saying. Glossaryck gives a lesson to Meteora where she sees him giving magic to the mutants, as well as an interesting encounter with Toffee. In the original show, Toffee says,
Hey, Toffee!
Who said that? Oh, hello again.
which suggests that this older version of Toffee knows Glossaryck. Later in this interaction, Glossaryck suggests that this isn't just for Meteora, but for Toffee as well. In the rewrite, we will soon understand why this scene is so important, as well as Glossaryck's training of Meteora specifically. When she attacks him, Glossaryck tells her to stop, and she does, but Toffee tells her that she shouldn't let Glossaryck limit her power like that, like he did for him. Eclipsa tries to speak to Romulus about setting Globgor free, even to at least just unfreeze his face so she can talk to him, but there is always another magical High Commission member there. When she finally gets him alone, he's about to answer when maybe someone like Hecapoo shows up and reminds Eclipsa that Globgor is a criminal and he must remain in his prison. Moon asks Eclipsa why she's so animate on only convincing Romulus in particular, when he's not really all that competent, and Eclipsa explains that he's not what he seems. We then see a flashback with Eclipsa and Romulus, and they actually have a good rapport. One might even see that they were friends. She explains to him that yes, her marriage was arranged by her mother, but she and Shasta can, he's nice in this version so I can actually use his name, that they have reached some kind of agreement where they can just say that they are married to appease their parents. She tells him about Globgor, but he shuts it down immediately, saying that the High Commission won't let it fly. She brushes it off, saying that she's had beef with the Commission before, but Romulus explains that this situation will be much more serious, but Eclipsa has made up her mind. She's in love with Globgor, and she won't stop seeing him. And then she shows him Meteora. Romulus tells her that she needs to run away immediately before the Commission finds out, which she does. About a few months or maybe like a year later, Romulus finds Eclipsa and explains that their plan is backfiring since the Commission has been trying to track her down for running away, and they even have reports of her being spotted with Globgor. She and Globgor are willing to face whatever the Commission has in store for them, but they ask Romulus to take Meteora back to Shastakan since she is the rightful heir and Muni needs a powerful queen. Eclipsa makes Globgor run away, and she faces the High Commission, but they are unable to defeat her essentially because she is quite powerful, so Romulus is ordered to encase her in crystal. In the present, Moon asks if she had a chance to speak to Romulus or to challenge the Commission. Eclipsa explains that when she first met Moon pointing the wand at her and learned that her chapter has been called Forbidden, it was very clear that her image had been tainted. When she was freed from the crystal, Romulus had seen her. He told her that he couldn't hide her escape from the Commission too long, so they need to come up with a plan quickly, but she says that she sees no point. Romulus then tells her that her daughter is alive, and that if she can convince the royals of the Commission's sadiness, things might be for the better. By the time she meets Star in the castle, Romulus has told the Commission and Moon as planned that Eclipsa has been freed. Back in the present, with the flashback over, she talks to Moon about her questions surrounding her attempted assassination and wondering if it was really all in the name of hating monsters. Meanwhile, the members of the High Commission are trying to figure out what to do about Eclipsa being on the throne with a half-monster baby as their heir. They are also aware that Eclipsa will soon follow up on the events that led to her imprisonment, and that Star has been asking a little too many questions as of late. They also know that they can't get rid of them like before, since Star and Moon are very aware of the conspiracy and very suspicious. Romulus suggests that maybe they should just supervise Meteora's training so she doesn't get too strong, and have her join the Commission in the future, since with Lekmet gone, they need a replacement. Hecapoo points out that it would make it seem as if any monster could replace them, so Romulus suggests that they offer Moon a position on the Commission. The Commission thinks about it for a bit, and Romulus also brings up freeing Globgor at Eclipsa's request, to which they respond that he should remember that he is a monster who killed Shastakan and destroyed a bunch of villages. We still get a Janice and Tom episode where they go around exploring, but instead of finding a boot for a plotline that I'm already getting angry thinking about, Janice and Tom see the other lizards. Remember the ones from Moon and Yonta that were supposed to have been scattered away? Right, them. They also seem to be talking about their leader returning. Tom says they need to tell Star and Eclipsa. In another episode, perhaps the one right afterwards, Star, Moon, and Eclipsa, and maybe Mark as well, I don't know, go to the Commission with what they have learned about Toffee potentially being alive. Moon explains that it wouldn't have been possible since she made a deal with Eclipsa, and that's what got Eclipsa freed. They look over at Romulus and slowly realize that there was someone else who could unfreeze Eclipsa. Before the council can react, Romulus crystallizes them. He explains how after Eclipsa was frozen, the Commission went after Meteora. Globgor fought them in defense, and Romulus was ordered to freeze him since it was too difficult to fight him when he kept size shifting. They then tried to deal with Meteora. Unlike what they said at the trial, Shasta Khan tried to keep Meteora and raise her to be the rightful ruler of Muni, but the Commission refused. They plan to actually get rid of her, if you know what I mean. But Romulus said that they keep her alive and suppress her power enough, then she won't be a threat, but when they need help, especially with the lizards, i.e. Toffee and his people, she might be able to defeat them since the Commission are unable to kill them themselves. After the fake Festivia was put onto the throne, Shastakan left as a moment of defiance, but the Commission used this to tell the kingdom that Globgor ate Shastakan, further recreating the fear and distrust of monsters and justifying imprisoning him, as well as discouraging any of the queens from having a monster husband again. He released Eclipsa since he knew the deal that her and Moon had made. He didn't think that Toffee would return, he just thought that the spell couldn't break the crystal, so he freed Eclipsa and blamed it on the deal that the queens made. They question why the Commission would do all this, but before Romulus can explain, Omnitraxus opens up a portal and shoves him through. The rest of the group are forced to come up with a decision very quickly. Should they find out what happened to Romulus or check to see if Toffee is actually alive, since it is clear now that the deal that Moon and Eclipsa made is not what freed her? Glossaryck makes the decision for them and tells them that it is more important that they find Romulus and Omnitraxus, wherever he took him. Eclipsa leaves Meteora with the Diazes to protect her before opening a portal to the Eclipsa dimension, with the babies secretly following them later on. The rest of the team go from dimension to dimension, searching for Romulus, perhaps even stopping at the tavern at the end of the multiverse, before Star asks Glossaryck why they don't just check Omnitraxus's dimension, but Glossaryck explains that Romulus freezing the crystal ball simply froze the communication channel that Omnitraxus had created. He didn't have his own dimension necessarily, his physical body just exists somewhere that he couldn't take Romulus to. He explained that Omnitraxus is able to open dimensions to anywhere without the use of scissors. Star remarks about how powerful he must be to do that, and Glossaryck says that she's done the same thing. When she got herself out of the wand, she opened a portal from the magic dimension. To this, Star doesn't respond, but Marco questions why Glossaryck can't do the same thing. He explains that he can do exactly that and even demonstrates, but he explains that it doesn't matter. There are an infinite number of dimensions, and Omnitraxus could have taken Romulus anywhere. They question what he's doing, and he explains that he's buying time so that he can explain. The next part is going to be somewhat over-explained just to make sure that I can get my point across. Obviously, if this was to be written, it would be written in a much less clunky and exposition-dumpy way. He tells them the whole deal about him, and his people being the ones who shaped the universe by dispersing magic. He explained it would start by giving everyone the same amount of magic. There was one of his kind in every realm, and he was assigned to Muni, also known as the Monster Realm. He and his people would reconvene every once in a while, but his people began to dwindle out. They soon learned that for many, the creatures of the realms turned on them and used the magic against them. Glossaryck can give out magic and bend the rules of time and space, but he cannot use the magic. In this regard, he is not invulnerable. Meanwhile, the monsters constantly fought each other, sometimes even killing each other off. He noticed a few monsters who did not participate in these fights: the members of the High Commission and Toffee. He gave them more magic and appointed them as the guardians of the realm and of him, in case the other monsters tried to turn on him. While this was partly for his protection as well as the realm's protection, it inflated the worth of the monsters that he had selected. Moon questions how this could be, since the Commission are beings of pure magic. Glossaryck explains it's what they say, but in reality they are just monsters. Over time, the selected group of monsters are able to crush the other monsters' rebellion and rule over them. Over time, their magic gets stronger as they hone it, while the other monsters lose touch with magic, with only a few being able to use it in small amounts. Think about a potential ancestor for Globgor. The monsters branch out to other dimensions to keep growing their powers and surveilling other dimensions, but Toffee seeks to claim Muni for his own and branch out and conquer other dimensions as well. Glossaryck tries to stop him, but Toffee is essentially stronger and attempts to kill Glossaryck, but the other Commission members show up before Toffee can hurt him. Mind you, at this point, none of these members are fully at the place that they could be magic-wise, including Toffee. He is invulnerable here, and that is his main skill, which makes it difficult for the other monsters to kill him, but his other powers are not as strong as they could be. Glossaryck opens a portal and they shove Toffee through it. Glossaryck explains that once someone has been exposed to the amount of magic he gave Toffee, they can get much stronger over time, and so he knew that this solution would only be temporary, so he started trying to find a more permanent solution. Now, Earth was supposed to be the one realm without magic, so he knew that the people there would not be as strong as the monsters, but he questioned whether giving magic to a completely different kind of creature could yield more positive results. So he opened a portal to Earth, and random settlers sailed through, and he gave one of them the wand, making the first queen of Muni. This way they had access to magic, and could potentially come up with a solution to the Toffee situation, but they couldn't reach the same catastrophic level as Toffee. Or so he thought. He glances at Star before continuing the story. Meanwhile, the monsters of this commission keep on enhancing their powers. He brings up how Hecuba created the interdimensional scissors to choose who would get to wield the power of space manipulation. He talks of how they created the council to control the Queens of Muni and sometimes even controlling Glossaryck. They were happy to keep down the other monsters since it created a warped sense of elitism. By now the other original monsters with magic have died out, so no one even remembers how magic entered the land except them. They remember that Glossaryck is able to be killed, but they seem to have forgotten just how much more he knows than them and how much more powerful he can be. But at the same time, if they put their minds to it, they can kill him like the rest of his people were killed. But he's also been alive for a long time, and if he's not killed, he'll live a lot longer. He'd rather invest his time and energy into finding an end to Toffee rather than fighting the Commission over minuscule things. When Toffee first resurfaced, the Commission did not want to just reveal how well they knew him. They were also a little salty that they could never really defeat Toffee, and essentially had to reverse run away from the problem. This is part of the reason why they started collaborating with the Kingdom and allowed for Romulus to temporarily unfreeze Eclipsa in the hopes to destroy Toffee without having to face him again. Glossaryck also knows that Toffee has been able to train other lizards to regenerate. This was not something he'd been expecting. The other lizards could not regenerate as easily as Toffee, but the power was still there. He also observed that Toffee was not using the full extent of his abilities, only showing off his regeneration. When Moon learned the spell, Glossaryck had really hoped that it could destroy Toffee, but Moon was afraid to let Eclipsa out and decided to shoot off his finger instead, which was disappointing, but clearly Toffee was shaken. As powerful as he is, his main edge was his regeneration, and now that's gone. But Toffee returns again. This time, when Star has the wand, he tells her to destroy it, hoping that there would be no other way to deliver the dark spell, but also remember how he smiled right before it blew up. He was somewhat hoping that he would be sucked into the wand, exposed to another round of magic, which is why he was so much more powerful when he started to possess Ludo, but then also when he returned in his actual body, able to reattach his finger that was blown off using a spell that should have been irreversible. Now Glossaryck admits that Star didn't use the wand the way that other queens did. When Toffee returns, even though Star is lost in a corrupted magic dimension, she comes back stronger, having been exposed to more magic for a shorter time than Toffee, and she thinks that she defeats Toffee. She believes him to be gone for good now, but this only weakened him, and now Glossaryck says he's come back. He always comes back. But his returns seem to be getting less and less spaced out, meaning that he might be trying to end this for good now. Star says that they've beaten Toffee 3 times and they can do it again. But Glossaryck points out that he was never really defeated, and that he, Glossaryck, is the only one aside from the Commission that can see what Toffee can truly do. He says the last person outside of them to truly know the extent of his power was Comet, Moon's mother. And he's only been getting stronger all this time. He points out that if he found a way to come back to Muni all those years ago, he might have either gotten his hands on interdimensional scissors, but it's also likely that he became able to open portals, which requires a lot of power to do. Moon suggests that if Toffee draws his strength from magic, they should go into the magic realm and destroy the magic. Glossaryck explained that this idea was already attempted by one of the first Muni queens who knew of Toffee's dangers. The plan didn't work, but this is where the Whispering Spell originated. They then question what they are supposed to do and if Glossaryck has any actual solutions. He admits that he doesn't, and then all the anger and frustration that has been building up reaches a boiling point. Moon asks why it has taken Glossaryck all this time to explain things, and he simply says that he didn't feel like it was the right time. This was a pretty big deal, and it takes time to explain and react to. Time he wished could have been spent after Toffee was defeated, but seeing that everything is blowing up now, and perhaps understanding Toffee more could put an end to him, now might be the best time. Marco asks if he knows how to get rid of Omnitraxis and Romulus, and Glossaryck nods. He explains that they would have taken too long fighting over telling them or not and wasting time, which is why he made this decision. Eclipsa, perhaps the angriest, questions why he let the Commission do what they did to her family. He explains that in part it was due to the fear of creating another creature like Toffee, but he is also technically afraid of everyone he gives magic to, including everyone in the room. With this knowledge, they could attempt to kill him dead, just like Toffee did, just like the other beings did to his people. Being elusive is his strength. He also explains that he can never lose sight of what is important, no matter how much he likes a particular ruler, since at the end of the day, one day they will be gone, and he will keep living and dealing with the consequences. This is also why he lets the submission of monsters continue, better that than hundreds of dimensions suffer. Eclipsa demands to be taken back to her child immediately. They get to Earth, but the babies are gone. Eclipsa, now enraged, questions where they are. Glossaryck asks her to forgive them for what he had to do and opens a portal to Hekabu's dimension. Before anyone goes through, Eclipsa threatens Glossaryck to bring her family back, including Globgor. Glossaryck explains to Eclipsa that her daughter is stronger than most of the Queens of Muni because of the monster blood in her. Eclipsa does not respond. Moon goes with Glossaryck to deal with the mess of the commission that needs to be dealt with. The group goes their separate ways. This episode will probably end here given how heavy and messy it is. The next episode will probably feature Marco, Star, and Eclipsa in Hecubu's dimension, searching for Meteora and Mariposa, whilst also grappling with the recent revelations. Like I said before, Marco wouldn't have aged up in this world, so seeing Mariposa and Meteora like this would actually come as a bigger shock to audiences. Eclipsa questions why Glossaryck would have put Meteora through here, and then she sees how powerful Meteora has gotten. Also, Marco notes the skills that Mariposa has as well. Meanwhile, the other members of the commission are unfrozen, and Glossaryck explains that their secret is now out. This results in an argument that turned into a fight, with Moon quelling it and saying that they have more pressing matters with Toffee's return. Eclipsa says she wants to shield Meteora from a fight since it isn't fair to her, but Star and Marco can see that she's clearly stronger than the others would be against Toffee. When they return to Earth, however, the babies are back as babies, and Eclipsa hopes that this means that she wouldn't have to send Meteora into fight. They return to Muni without Mariposa, obviously, and the commission is there. Eclipsa immediately pulls out her wand and Star gets ready to fight, but Moon gets between them. She explains that they need to put this aside until the Toffee threat has gone. The commission then tells that they have a peace offering, and Romulus says that it was his idea. Out of the shadows steps Globgor, and the family is reunited. Now, the next major part of this rewrite would be the finale, with Toffee coming to conquer Muni and claim what he has felt like was his right to rule, having been around for so long and being so powerful. But there is no way it should come directly after these episodes. We should have maybe a few more episodes, either very low stake or filler action. The commission would come clean to the public with an apology. If I was genuinely writing this, I'd have had one of them say, well, we're actually monsters, and the humans gasp, and then maybe Romulus says, stop being so shocked, just look at us. Anyway, the coronation can happen, and while there would be tension and discomfort, the upcoming threat would be announced, which should potentially put that tension on hold. I think that this would be a nice moment to have the monster ball as, yes, a way to like integrate monsters into the kingdom, but then also kind of like one last hurrah before war. We should also have episodes that just build stronger relationships. Eclipsa learning to let go of Meteora and accepting that she does need to fight. They're thinking about plans for Toffee's invasion, maybe even recruiting people from other realms, having a beach day or an outing to forget about the war that's likely to arrive. Like when Team Avatar have a beach day in the first episode of the Sosa's Comet finale. I know they said they don't like the beach day plotline, and that was because I didn't really like the way that it was used with the concept of Father Time. Star uses it to remind her that better days are coming, and it's like what gives her hope that her mom isn't dead. But I know this is kind of like horrible to say, but like, why would she have the beach day then? Because like whenever something bad might happen, right, she would say, no, I haven't had the beach day yet, so clearly nothing can happen before that would upset me. But then if she has the beach day, then it could very well be that there will be no happy day after it. Ugh, that is beside the point. Let's talk about the finale. So I'm not going to go into excruciating detail with this just because it's above my pay grade. I will talk about the major beats of the fight and not much else. Like, I will not tell you like exactly how many people show up. I will not tell you exactly how long this fight should go. Anyway, everyone in Muni as well as others from different dimensions unite against Toffee and his lizard army. Romulus takes the lead and tries to freeze Toffee, but Toffee dodges his attack. Everyone starts fighting and Star and Moon take on Toffee, and while he is distracted, Romulus freezes him. They gasp. He goes silent. They pause, and then Toffee busts out. Yep, and now he's in his final form. No holding back, he is bringing out the magic. Let's just use our imaginations to figure out what Toffee's powers could be. He just has magic, like, I don't know what he's doing. He just has more magical powers than he's been letting on. Anyway, so it's time for plan B. Star opens up a portal to the magic dimension and tells Moon and Eclipsa to go through. Toffee attempts to follow them, but Star opens up the portal to Hecubu's dimension right in front of him, trapping him inside. Tom, maybe Kelly, River, and the others stay in Muni, facing off against the lizard. Eclipsa gives her wand to Marco and tells him to give it to Meteora. On Hecubu's dimension, Toffee faces up against Hecubu and her clones. Meanwhile, Marco goes back on Earth where Meteora and Mariposa are being kept safe. They enter the dimension and ate up again. Marco hands the wand to Meteora, which says she doesn't need it. They fight Toffee and Meteora starts to drain him, and it works until he knocks her away. Marco and Mariposa use the wand together and blast Toffee. Meteora tries to drain him again, but Toffee tries to convince her that they are the same. They're both too powerful, others are seeking to control that power, and Muni's throne is being stolen from them. But Meteora doesn't fall for it and begins to drain him. It works, but he reveals that he can also open portals, albeit not so amazingly, and he opens one to the magic dimension, which one is exactly what Star had wanted. She follows him there, where Moon and Eclipsa have essentially been charging up, and like in the original finale, they are able to summon the previous queens and also those horse things are here as well, but like they're the good ones. Eclipsa has a moment of closure with her mother, and we see her in her butterfly form and she actually uses it to fight. All of them, including Star, fight Toffee, knocking him out and opening the portal back to Muni where he is weakened, and his followers see him this way. Oh my gosh, I forgot about Marco like riding on Tom's back. I'd find a way to shoehorn this into my version of the finale. It's just so fun. I can't explain it. Anyway, so Toffee is knocked down. Oh my gosh, I think I forgot to mention how much I love Tom and Marco as friends. I'm saying it here. Anyway, so Toffee is knocked down, but before they can celebrate, Toffee takes one of his followers, maybe Rastakor since we know him, and basically drains him of his magic, essentially killing him and getting his strength back, and ultimately losing the trust of his people, which reveals he doesn't actually care about that much since they would always be so far beneath him anyway. In the final moment of the fight, Star goes 1v1 against Toffee. It's not looking too great for her, so the others tries to help, but Toffee sends out a blast that blows most away, but Star stands her ground. Glossaryck warns her that she is not strong enough because Toffee is a monster, but Star will not listen. Toffee says she should, since this is how Comet faced her demise. Star then gets an idea. She opens a portal to the magic dimension where all the previous queens are kind of just like channeling all their energy and power through her, and she reaches into Toffee, dips down if you will, and begins to start to drain the magic. Catching on to what Star is doing, Toffee closes the portal, weakening Star, but she continues. Glossaryck wants the power to be too much, but she pulls it out anyway and manages to contain it. Toffee, who is basically only being kept alive by magic, just withers away, crumbles, and dies. Voldemort style, or maybe like Mother Gothel, turned to dust. Hey, this is a fun villain send-off to have. Star gives a drop of this magic back to Rastakor to bring him back to life in a moment of mercy, and Glossaryck is shocked with how she manages to surpass the expectations of what a human should be able to do. The final battle ends with a shot of Star's portrait that has been finished reading Star the All-Powerful, or something along those lines, maybe like Star Breaker of Chains or Star Reveal of Truth. I know this is very much kind of giving Chosen One, and maybe some of you feel like this is an unearned finale for Star, like being treated better than others, but like she is the main character. And not to use comparisons as the crutch of my argument, but there are very many male-led cartoons where the main character is basically made strong for seemingly no reason and even, I don't know, recreate the entire universe. And either way, it has been sprinkled throughout the series, in both the original and my rewrite, that Star is actually a very powerful magic user, so I don't think that it's that ridiculous for the finale. We get a small time jump for the epilogue, where perhaps a magical school has been opened, being led by some commission members and by some, I just mean Romulus and Moon. I was going to have the commission's magic also be taken, and with this being a version where they were ready to kill a baby, I think that that could be fine, but I think that it's a little harder to justify since they weren't always as dangerous and evil as Toffee, and they have lost much of their power now that everyone knows the nonsense that they have been on. Glossaryck continues to coach the Queens of Muni, and we see the new integrated monster Human Kingdom, with people now stronger together having been united against Toffee, with Meteora eventually becoming queen like she deserves, and obviously seeing more of Eclipsa and her family. Starco is confirmed, although it would have been confirmed earlier in this rewrite, and I like the idea of her settling back on Earth, commuting to Muni when needed. As for magic in general, I think maybe Star can have a conversation with Glossaryck where he suggests that she step into a role like his, where she gives it out, but she responds that she doesn't really feel like she has earned the right to decide who gets magic and who doesn't, and as much as she's saved the world, she herself isn't a saint and has used magic in the past for selfish gains. And honestly, the show could just end here. It doesn't need to provide a concrete answer on anything, since nothing is really ever concrete, even for semi-immortal characters like Glossaryck, the Commission, and even Toffee. And that is the rewrite. Thank you so much for watching this far. If you made it this far, make my day even better by leaving a comment, a like, and a subscribe. I know I set up the Commission thing like it was going to be the worst thing in the world, but after sitting with it for a while and fleshing out the idea, I actually started to really like it. I also took a while to write this. I was constantly second-guessing myself because sometimes it makes sense then it doesn't, but I realized that it's not the end of the world, and I am writing this to emphasize the elements of the show that I liked the most. These elements will look different for so many others, so please let me know what you would have changed or kept from the original rewrite. Please let me know if I should also make another video like this. I have one more in mind that I'll probably publish anyway since the script already exists. In case you like videos about shows that fell off, keep your eye out for my next video with my sister where we talk about the Dragon Prince and more so the fall of the Dragon Prince. Until then, I am JustASquirrel and thank you so much for watching.